folks, it's Mary. Today we are going to be looking at some new to me vintage Boye crochet hooks. Yes, we are doing another closer look at some of these vintage hooks that I recently acquired, and I found them to be really interesting, so I wanted to compare these vintage ones to my modern ones. Now, before we get started, I do want to credit Miss Maya Lee, who has an Etsy shop called Hooked on Needlework. If you ever click on the description of my videos, oftentimes you will find a link to her shop, and you will find a discount code for anyone who is interested in vintage crochet hooks, particularly the aluminum ones. She has more than just vintage crochet hooks, but if you are interested, go check her out. I know that at the time of recording, she has her shop kind of on hiatus for a moment, but I'm sure she will be back soon and she will be glad to see you. This video is not sponsored by her, but all of the information I'm sharing today comes from predominantly her research into the Boye company. So the reason that I wanted to do this video was I got this size in USA Boye crochet hook, and this is not the only size in that I have. In fact, I have two others, and they are both modern hooks. One of them is a size N, and it is a 9mm. The other is also a size N, and it is a 10mm. My question was, what is the true size N? I was not even aware that the Boye company created a size N in the vintage style hook. If you look from the side, you see a very big difference in the shape of the hook head. So it's pretty easy to see on these two more modern hooks, the 9mm versus the 10mm, the size 15 versus the size 9. They both have the straight label on the back, and even though this 9mm has a slightly different hook head shape than this one, it's still not quite the same as the vintage one. Now this vintage one where it says the size, a letter, and then USA with the script print and the quotation marks, from what I understand, this one dates to about 1949. The Boye company originally started in around 1900, but during the years of World War II, all of the steel and aluminum had to go towards the war effort. So it wasn't until after the war that they were able to produce aluminum crochet hooks again. So again, this one dates to about 1949. And while we're at it, let me just go ahead and show these others that I have. This one was also a new acquisition. It is marked USA, size K, and 55 cents. This one dates from the 1950s. This size K Boye hook, also marked USA. This one actually was acquired from Miss Maya Lee, and it has the Boye logo on the back, but without the quotation marks. So this one is more from the 1960s up until the 80s. Just as a further point of reference, this is a size J10 hook. This one has the more standard, more modern stamp on it with the size and then the number and the millimeterage. But this size J was probably manufactured in about 2003. I bought it either in 2003 or 2004, maybe even 2005, but definitely the manufacturer is from the early 2000s. After that, the Boye company changed hands and production of their hooks changed. So leaving the K hooks aside, let's come back to these size Ns. So one of the things I thought would be interesting was to use this vintage Boye needle gauge. Now it's not specifically designed for crochet hooks, but I realized that I could go from the back and just kind of give a point of reference to how wide or small these hooks might be. So here is a modern size N 15 10mm. Fits nicely through here. And actually that would be right on with the 15. Here is another size N, the 9mm. Let's see how far it fits. Okay, so perhaps somewhere between the 11 and 13. So probably right here, you might call this a size 12. And then this vintage one from 1949 or so fits nicely into that 15 slot. So there is that marked difference, and you see that these two then are comparable. You can see even from the back how different they are. Just as one further thing, let's weigh them to see the difference. So here is our modern N, which is the 9mm. That one comes in at 18 grams. Then the modern N, which is the 10mm, comes in at 28 grams. and the vintage in. Comes in at 28. So beautiful discovery for me that these two are comparable. Beautiful to see how such a modern hook did have its original vintage counterpoint way back in the 1940s. Let's go back to the K-hooks for a moment. Now I do have a modern K-hook. This was acquired in sometime from 2020 onwards. This one is the straight script. It doesn't say it's made in the USA. It's claiming to be a 6.5 millimeter hook, and it's a size K, 10.5. Here is the size K that was from the 1950s. And here is the size K from the 1960s up until the 1980s. Not exactly sure when that was manufactured. We can see on the back they are fairly comparable to one another in terms of size. This hook from the 1950s might be ever so slightly larger in diameter. Let's take a look. Okay, so this K-hook from the 1950s fits very snugly into the size 11 slot. Let's try the size 11 on the modern one. Okay, very different there. 10.5, that's fairly smooth and definitely not in the 10. So this one is marked 10.5, so that would be comparable there. And then let's go back to the 1960s up into the 80s. Okay, so we are somewhere between 10.5 and 11. It definitely won't go in the 10.5, but it's definitely too small for the 11. Interesting. So how is this going to play out when I crochet? Well, first of all, I'm probably not going to reach for this modern one. I might keep it just for comparison's sake, because you can see it in the shapes of the head there, how different they are. Actually, just as one more point of reference, here is a modern L hook. It's a size 11 or an 8 millimeter, again with that modern script on the back. How does that compare? Would that go pretty nicely into that size 11? Okay, so here we have a modern L and we have a much earlier K. All right, so that is interesting. So this K hook here is actually the size L, which is the 8 millimeter, not the 6.5 millimeter. Interesting. All right. Well, hey, I am learning something right along with you guys, so thank you so much for spending some time with me today as I take a closer look at some of my vintage hooks and learn along with you. If this kind of thing interests you, I do have a playlist looking at some various vintage hooks, predominantly the more tapered hooks in the straight aluminum, just about my observations, taking a closer look at some of these vintage crochet hooks. But if I'm not your cup of tea, thanks so much for listening this long. I do appreciate you, and I do hope I'll see you again soon. Bye!